I held Grandpa Harold's hand while the monitors flatlined at 3:47 a.m., and his last words cut through the antiseptic fog like a blade. "She's lying about the will," he rasped, eyes suddenly sharp after weeks of haze. "Melinda changed to destroyed the real one. Promise me you'll fight her." His fingers went cold in mine, but something hotter than grief ignited in my chest. I smiled, nodded, and made a silent vow right there in Cedar Ridge Medical Center. The nurses rushed in, but I was already planning. Melinda thought she'd won. She was wrong. My name is Eleanor Griffin. Everyone calls me Elle. I've been keeping vigil at Grandpa's bedside for 3 straight weeks in Willow Grove Estates. Our picture-perfect HOA neighborhood where every blade of grass had to be exactly 3 inches and American flags couldn't fly past Memorial Day. The nurses knew my coffee order. The janitor slipped me fresh cups at 2 a.m. That final night, the room smelled of impending loss, and the faint lavender air freshener Melinda insisted on because the HOA covenant requires pleasant scents for visitors. Grandpa's breathing had turned shallow. Each inhale a battle. I'd sent Aunt Melinda home around midnight. She'd done her usual performance, dabbing dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, checking her phone every 30 seconds. "Call me if anything changes." "Dear," she'd said, already halfway out the door in her pastel pantsuit that screamed HOA President on duty. I was alone with him when it happened. His clouded eyes sharpened with startling clarity, grip tightening stronger than it had been in months. "Melinda," he forced out. "The will. She changed it. Destroyed the original." A violent cough interrupted. I grabbed the water cup, but he pushed it away. "Promise me you'll fight her. You're the only one who never took from me." Those were his last coherent words. Within minutes, the alarm screamed, and the room filled with white coats. They worked on him for 23 minutes before calling time of death. I sat numb as they covered his face. My mind raced, replaying every suspicious moment over the last 5 years. Melinda had moved back to Willow Grove Estates 5 years ago, right after my parents died, positioning herself as the devoted daughter who sacrificed her city career to care for Dad. She'd immediately run for HOA President and won, unopposed. Of course, because who argues with the woman who can fine you into bankruptcy for a faded welcome mat? She hovered over Grandpa whenever documents needed signing, insisted on switching him to her hand-picked lawyer last year, claiming old Mr. Brigam was too outdated for modern covenants. The medications that made him drowsy right before important paperwork always timed perfectly. The funeral director arrived at 5:15 a.m. and asked if I wanted a ride with the body. My phone buzzed. "Melinda, is he gone?" No tears, just efficiency. "Yes, I'll handle everything, the arrangements, the HOA memorial service. You must be exhausted. Dear, go home and rest." I kept my voice steady. "What about his will?" A pause too long. "Oh, Ed, Daddy didn't have one. We discussed it many times, but he never got around to it. Everything will go through probate as his only surviving child." Liar. The word burned in my throat, but I bit it back. She'd already booked Garrett's funeral services at 5 a.m., while Grandpa's body was still warm. Standing in that empty hospital room, the indent of his body still visible on the sheets. I made my decision. The girl who trusted family had died at 3:47 a.m., right beside Harold Griffin. The funeral was everything Grandpa would have hated and everything Melinda loved. St. Mary's overflowed with white orchids and HOA board members in matching pastel blazers. A string quartet played somber pieces Grandpa never listened to. Melinda had hired a videographer for the community archive. I arrived early in the simple black dress Grandpa once said made me look like Grandma. Melinda claimed the front pew for herself and her husband Richard. already whispering to neighbors about poor Dad's declining mind and no will, so the house defaults to me as next of kin. From the second row, I watched every calculated tear, every power handshake. Her designer black suit probably cost more than most residents' monthly HOA dues. When Mr. Brigham caught my eye from the back, he gave the tiniest nod. Melinda's eulogy mentioned herself 43 times. I sacrificed my thriving career to care for him as HOA President. I ensured his final years followed every covenant. I gripped the pew until my knuckles whitened. Grandpa's mind had been razor sharp until the med she managed. When the pastor invited others to speak, I stood. Ed, dear, perhaps it's best if Melinda started, but I was already at the podium. I looked out at the sea of pastel suits and whispered condolences. Grandpa taught me to fish at the community lake when I was 7. He didn't care about the fish. He cared about the quiet moments when you could tell someone the truth without the HOA interrupting. My gaze drifted to Melinda. He also taught me about trust and how devastating it is when it's broken. The church went dead silent. Melinda's face paled beneath her foundation. After the service, the receiving line stretched forever. I shook hands, accepted hollow condolences, but I listened. Such a shame about the estate, Mrs. Peterson whispered. Melinda says no will. Everything defaults to her. Lucky. Those Lakeview lots alone are worth millions. Near the doors, I intercepted Mr. Brigham. Could we talk? He glanced around nervously. Not here. My office tomorrow, 10 a.m. And Miss Griffin, be careful. Your aunt has resources, and she's already proven what she'll do to protect her interests. Melinda watched us from the champagne table she'd set up at her own father's funeral. She raised her glass in a mock toast. I smiled back, not the grieving granddaughter smile. Something colder. She looked away first. That night I sat in Grandpa's house, my house now, supposedly surrounded by the absurd perfection of Willow Grove Estates. The HOA covenant book sat on the coffee table like a Bible. Melinda had already taped a violation notice to the door. Lawn measured at 3.2 inches, $2.50 fine. Paint on shutters faded 0.3 shades from approved beige, $500. I laughed out loud. The sound sharp in the empty rooms. She thought she was dealing with the same naive 20-something who'd trusted family. That girl was gone. I opened my laptop and started documenting every suspicious moment, every odd medication timing, every HOA fine Grandpa had paid to keep the peace. Melinda thought she'd won with her forged documents and stolen inheritance. She had no idea the war was just beginning. The reception at the country club was another gaudy Melinda production. Champagne toasts to Dad's legacy, while she casually mentioned selling the house for the community good. I made my appearance, slipped away, and drove straight to old Mr. Brigham's tiny office on Maple Street. The elderly lawyer looked relieved when I walked in. "Thank God you came alone," he said, closing the blinds. Harold was paranoid enough to make backups. The original will disappeared from my safe 2 weeks ago. Professional job, no break-in signs. But I kept photocopies of everything, including the forensic accounting. He slid a thick folder across the desk. Melinda had embezzled nearly $2 million over 5 years, hidden through shell companies and fake vendor payments for HOA improvements that never happened. The will itself left the house, the lake lot, and the majority of assets to me, with a modest trust from Melinda and a scathing letter explaining exactly why she wasn't getting more. "She's already stolen enough," Grandpa had written. Mr. Brigham's eyes blazed. "She'll fight dirty." 3 of my former clients received calls suggesting they find new representation. My secretary quit after someone sent her husband photos implying an affair that never happened. I left his office with copies in my bag and drove past the community lake where Grandpa taught me to cast. The water glowed gold in the morning sun, the same spot the HOA had tried to seize for public development 3 years ago. Melinda's fingerprints were everywhere. Back home, another violation waited. American flag faded beyond HOA-approved vibrancy. $7.50 fine. Removal required within 48 hours. I left it flying. That night my phone rang at 4:12 a.m. Unknown number. Heavy breathing, then a distorted voice. Stop digging. Your grandfather's gone. Let the past stay buried. Your aunt has connections you can't imagine. I laughed into the silence. Tell Melinda the flag stays up. Click. She'd chosen the wrong approach. By 6 a.m., I had 12 responses from former HOA board members and employees Melinda had fired. Jonas Mueller, the old treasurer, was the most detailed. I've been waiting for someone to ask. I kept everything off-site before she escorted me out. Your grandfather was trying to transfer the majority of his assets to a trust in your name. The paperwork was nearly complete when he fell down the stairs. I printed every email, every bank statement. The picture sharpened. This wasn't just a forged will. This was systematic elder abuse using HOA power as the weapon. Melinda issued selective fines to stress Grandpa into signing whatever she put in front of him, then managed his medications to keep him compliant. I pulled medical records using the healthcare proxy he'd given me years ago. Lorazepam and haloperidol appeared like clockwork before every document signing, always discontinued afterward. The confusion only hit during legal times. At 9:45 a.m., I sat in my car outside Brygham's office, uploading everything to 3 cloud services and emailing copies to Clara Hendricks, the estate attorney whose reputation was built on destroying untouchable family scams. The video testimony Grandpa recorded 13 months earlier was devastating. On screen, clear-eyed and articulate, my name is Harold Griffin. I am of sound mind despite what my daughter Melinda might claim. She is systematically stealing my estate using her position as HOA President. The medications appear whenever papers need signing. I fear she is drugging me. He detailed the forged signatures, the isolated friends, the HOA funds funneled into her personal accounts. Clara's voice on the phone was calm steel. The video is bulletproof, but she'll challenge his capacity. We don't file yet. Let her think she's won. Let her start spending money she doesn't have. Meanwhile, we build in the shadows. Over the next 2 weeks, while Melinda publicly announced plans to modernize Grandpa's lake lot into an HOA event space, code for selling to developers for kickbacks, we gathered quietly. Jonas provided detailed embezzlement records, every fraudulent HOA transaction highlighted. David Park, Clara's forensic accountant, traced offshore accounts. Your aunt's not as smart as she thinks. Same shell companies for every theft. Once you pull one thread, the whole web unravels. The threats escalated. My tires slashed Thursday night. A brick through the window Friday. Anonymous posts on the Willow Grove Facebook page. Security footage of me rifling through Grandpa's desk while he slept. Edited to remove the part where I was searching for his heart medication. Caption: Eleanor Griffin stealing from her dying grandfather. This is who wants to challenge the estate. Neighbors started crossing the street. Melinda called. Be careful. Dear, Willow Grove isn't as safe as it used to be. The silk-wrapped threat was unmistakable. I smiled into the phone. Actually, I'm about to have a lot more family. My lawyer is filing papers today. Turns out Grandpa did have a will after all. Silence. Then, you're making a mistake. No, Melinda, you made the mistake. You just haven't paid for it yet. Clara Hendricks didn't look like a shark. 5'2", silver-haired, cat print cardigan. But her office wall told the truth. Newspaper clippings of every corrupt executive she destroyed. Rule number 1, she said, pouring coffee. Never let them see you coming. Your aunt expects a grieving niece making emotional decisions. We're going to let her keep thinking that. We let Melinda get comfortable. She started liquidating small assets, throwing lavish HO and memorial barbecues on Grandpa's dime. Meanwhile, our war room in Clara's secure downtown suite filled with flowcharts tracking every stolen dollar. She's transferred $800,000 offshore in the last week alone, David reported. Let her, Clara smiled. Every transaction is another count. I found Grandpa's letter to Melinda attached to the will. I created the greed that consumed you when you stole your first 1,000 at 17. I covered for you every time. I failed you as a father, but I won't fail Elle as a grandfather. The money I leave you is all you'll get, not because I don't love you, but because love sometimes means saying no. Even at the end, he loved her. It made what came next both harder and easier. We were ready. Monday morning, Clara filed everything simultaneously. Emergency asset freeze, criminal fraud charges, the will for immediate probate. At 8:15 a.m., Sheriff Davidson walked onto the country club tennis courts where Melinda was mid-serve in her pristine white outfit. The way her face went from confusion to rage to fear as she read the papers was captured on 3 different phones and already trending in the neighborhood group chat. By noon, the news had spread like wildfire. Willow Grove's most powerful resident was imploding. Melinda struck back at 1:45 p.m. The edited security video exploded across the HOA Facebook page. Don't panic, Clara said when I called. This is desperation. The press conference went ahead. Clara played portions of Grandpa's video testimony, showed forensic accounting, presented evidence of systematic drugging timed to HOA board meetings. This isn't about inheritance, she stated. This is elder abuse, financial fraud, and a daughter who weaponized her HOA presidency to betray her father's trust in the cruelest way. Melinda's team, Brennan and Associates, the lawyers who win through brutality, filed countersuits by evening, defamation, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They claimed the will was forged, the video deep-faked, the whole case a conspiracy by a mentally unstable niece with financial problems. Tuesday morning, my credit cards were canceled, bank accounts frozen on an emergency motion. Wednesday, casino photos from years ago were cropped and posted. Gambling addict trying to steal from grieving daughter. She was trying to break me. I'm not giving up, I told Clara. Good, because tomorrow we hit back. Friday's court hearing for the emergency freeze packed the courtroom. Half the neighborhood came to watch. Melinda entered like royalty, designer suit immaculate, flanked by 3 lawyers. Judge Harrison, old school and unimpressed by theatrics. Listen to Clara present the video will. Embezzlement evidence. Witness testimony from fired board members. Brennan fought hard, painting Melinda as the devoted daughter protecting her father's legacy from a grasping niece. He challenged the video's authenticity, the witness's credibility, Grandpa's mental capacity. Clara played her ace. Grandpa's independent neurological evaluation from Johns Hopkins 6 months before the will. Clean bill of health. Only effects of systematic drugging. Plus security footage from the Baltimore hotel showing him alert and discussing Melinda's manipulation with the manager, who testified live. The courtroom erupted. Melinda's mask slipped. She stared at me with pure hatred. After 20 minutes of arguments, Judge Harrison ruled, given the substantial evidence, I'm granting the emergency freeze on all assets pending full probate. I'm also referring the embezzlement and elder abuse allegations to the district attorney for criminal investigation. We'd won the first battle, but as we left the courthouse, Melinda brushed past me. This isn't over, she whispered. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Looking back, I should have taken that as a promise. The next 3 weeks became a war of attrition. Fires broke out at two neighborhood businesses Grandpa had invested in, ruled accidental, but we knew better. The booking system for the community lake events mysteriously crashed during peak season. Anonymous health code complaints flooded every property tied to the estate. She's trying to destroy the value before you inherit, David explained. If the assets are worthless, your victory means nothing. But Grandpa had taught me more than fishing. I called an emergency meeting with the remaining honest board members. We're going to war, not with lawyers this time, with excellence. We implemented old crisis protocols, handled everything manually, invited inspectors for comprehensive tours, and passed with flying colors. When travel bloggers mysteriously posted negative reviews, we responded with transparency and free stays. The turning point came when Jonas uncovered Melinda's secret contracts negotiating to sell Grandpa's lake lot to Apex Development for a casino. Conspiracy to defraud, Clara said. This could add decades to her sentence. I made the call myself. Hello, Aunt Melinda. Eleanor. Her voice was ice. Enjoying your blood money? I'm enjoying saving Grandpa's legacy from becoming a casino. Did you really think Apex wouldn't keep records of your promises? Silence. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop the harassment. You're going to plead guilty. In exchange, I won't pursue the additional charges that could put you away for life. She took 12 hours. The next morning, her lawyers contacted Clara. Full confession. Guilty plea. No trial. In exchange for my silence on the Apex conspiracy, Melinda would serve 5 to 7 years quietly. But I had one more card. The day before her sentencing, I visited her at county jail. She looked smaller in orange, stripped of her power suit and HOA blazer. Come to gloat, she asked. No, I said, sliding Grandpa's final letter across the table. To give you this. She opened it with trembling hands. I'd already read every word. Melinda, by the time you read this, I will have one. Not because I hate you, but because I love you too much to let you destroy yourself completely. The money would have been your end. Prison might save your soul if you let it. I forgive you for the pills, the lies, the theft, for becoming what I helped create through my weakness. Find peace in losing. Your father. She crumpled, sobbing, the first genuine emotion I'd seen in years. At sentencing, I spoke on her behalf, asking for rehabilitation over pure punishment. She received 7 years with possibility of parole in 4. Richard filed for divorce the same day. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of the community lake watching sunrise paint the water gold, the same spot Grandpa taught me to fish. Construction crews broke ground on the Harold Griffin Center for Independent Living, a facility for seniors to maintain dignity and autonomy, protected from financial exploitation and HOA overreach. Jonas Mueller now ran the neighborhood's remaining assets, restoring reputation beyond Grandpa's standards. The scholarship fund was operational, helping kids exploited by powerful relatives get education and therapy. I kept the lake lot undeveloped, just as Grandpa wanted. Every sunrise I could be found at our old fishing spot. Melinda sent one letter from prison. I understand now. Thank you. I didn't write back. Some stories need endings, not epilogues. But I kept Grandpa's promise. I made sure the truth burned through every lie they built. And in the end, that truth set us all free, even Melinda, though she paid for her freedom in years rather than dollars. The Griffin family crest holds a sword and scales, justice and judgment. Grandpa taught me to fish, but more importantly, he taught me when to use each. His last lesson was his greatest. Sometimes love means letting someone face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes mercy is measured in years of orange jumpsuits rather than forgotten sins. Sometimes winning means making sure nobody else loses the same way again. The HOA board held an emergency meeting the week after sentencing. I attended, sitting quietly in the back. The room was packed. Residents who'd once crossed the street now filled every chair. Jonas stood at the podium. For years we let one person weaponize our covenants for personal gain. Fines for grass height, flag colors, even the shade of beige on shutters. Melinda turned neighbor against neighbor. Today we vote to remove her legacy and rewrite the most abusive rules. The vote was unanimous. The new covenants passed with cheers. No more measuring grass at dawn. Flags could fly year-round. Homeowners could paint shutters any damn color they wanted. The pleasant scent requirement was abolished with laughter. I watched former board members who'd once feared Melinda now line up to testify about selective enforcement, about the fear that kept them silent. One elderly woman stood, voice shaking. She fined my husband $1,200 for planting tomatoes in the backyard because vegetable gardens are not aesthetically approved. He died 2 months later, still worried about that fine. Today, I plant tomatoes in his memory. The room erupted in applause. Melinda's name was officially erased from every plaque, every document. The community lake event space she tried to sell became the Harold Griffin Memorial Park, open to everyone. No membership required. I stood at the ribbon cutting, the same simple black dress from the funeral fluttering in the breeze. Neighbors who once believed her smears now shook my hand, eyes shining with something like gratitude. We didn't know, they kept saying. We didn't know what she was doing to him. Clara called later that afternoon. The district attorney wants to talk about additional charges on the Apex deal. You still want to keep your bargain? I looked out at the lake where kids were now fishing freely. No HOA rules dictating bait color. Let her serve her time. The community is already free. That evening, I sat on Grandpa's porch, the porch Melinda once tried to fine me for painting the wrong shade of white. The sunset painted the identical beige houses in warm gold. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like home instead of prison. A little girl from down the street rode her bike past, waving. No clipboard, Karen measuring her tire tracks. No violation notice taped to her handlebars. Just a kid being a kid. I raised my coffee cup toward the sky. We did it. Grandpa. The wind rustled the American flag I'd refused to take down, the one that had started it all. It flew proud and faded exactly as it should. The months that followed felt like waking up from a long nightmare. The Harold Griffin Center opened with a community picnic. No pastel suits. No forced smiles. Just neighbors grilling burgers and sharing stories about the man who'd quietly fought the HOA machine for decades. Jonas ran the place like Grandpa would have wanted. Every senior had a voice. Every rule reviewed by actual residents. No single Karen in charge. The scholarship kids started classes in the fall. Their thank you letters filling my mailbox with drawings of fishing poles and houses with whatever color shutters they wanted. I kept the original house exactly as Grandpa left it, except for one change. I painted the shutters the deep forest green he'd always secretly loved but never dared request because it violated Covenant 4.2.b. Neighbors stopped by just to see the color, laughing at how something so small could feel like rebellion. You started a revolution with paint, one joked. I smiled. Grandpa started it. I just finished it. Melinda's parole hearing came up faster than anyone expected. Richard testified against her again, detailing years of financial control and emotional manipulation. The board sent a letter opposing early release, citing the community trauma. I didn't attend. Instead, I spent that day at the lake with a new fishing pole, teaching the same little girl from down the street how to cast. When her line hit the water clean and true, she squealed exactly like I had at 7. Did I do it right? Perfect, I told her. And the best part? No one can fine you for it. Clara called that evening. She's staying inside for the full 7. The judge cited the pattern of abuse and the community impact. I exhaled long and slow. Good. The final twist came 6 months later when the district attorney quietly closed the Apex file after Melinda signed a permanent injunction barring her from any real estate development in the county. No additional prison time, but her name would forever be linked to the scandal in every title search. The developers who'd once courted her now crossed the street faster than residents once crossed for me. Karma, it turned out, wore an HOA badge and carried a clipboard. Willow Grove Estates voted to rename itself Griffin Grove in a landslide. The new welcome sign featured Grandpa's fishing hat instead of the old sterile logo. I stood at the unveiling with the entire neighborhood. The sunset turning every house, now painted in a rainbow of approved colors, into something warm and alive. No more identical beige prison. Just homes. That night, I sat on the porch again, the green shutters glowing softly in the porch light. The American flag snapped gently in the breeze. Across the street, the little girl's family had planted tomatoes right in the front yard. Bright red fruit visible from the road. No violation notice in sight. I laughed softly, the same laugh that had started in the hospital room the night Grandpa died. Somewhere in a prison cell, Melinda was probably staring at beige walls that matched the old covenants she'd loved so much. I hope she finally understood. The rules she'd worshipped had never been about community. They'd been about control. And control, once lost, never comes back. I raised my coffee cup one last time. We won. Grandpa. The whole neighborhood won. The wind carried my words across the lake where tomorrow more kids would learn to fish without fear of fines. Truth had burned through every lie, every forged signature, every petty violation. And in the end, that truth didn't just free me. It freed an entire suburb from the grip of one woman who thought she could play God with a rulebook. Some stories end with handcuffs and courtrooms. Ours ended with tomato plants in front yards and flags flying year-round. And that, I realized, was the real justice Grandpa had wanted all along. Not revenge, just freedom. The kind you can finally breathe in when the Karen finally loses her clipboard.